covering the stories that impact your life, your town, your state, and your future. This is the Means Report with your host, Brad Means.
Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to the Means Report. We appreciate you joining us as we embark on quite an endeavor here early in 2019, an endeavor that will lead to a much better understanding of all things cyber. That's right. For this edition of the Means Report and the three Means Reports that follow, we're going to do a series on what cyber really means. Today, looking at cyber breaches and hacking. We report on this all the time on NewsChannel 6. We'll find out what kind of efforts are going on to thwart the bad guys as they try to hack into our systems. And the practice of cybersecurity right here at home. Where are we headed? What are we doing right now to protect our nation and the world? You know, a lot of people do see Augusta, Georgia as the world headquarters when it comes to cyber, and so we thought it appropriate to bring in a couple of folks from the Georgia Cyber Center at Augusta University to help break things down. Again, a four-part series now. You're going to want to tune in for the next month and find out everything that's going on in our cyber world. Sarah Reese is the director of Cyber Workforce Academy, the Cyber Workforce Academy, doing a lot of great work at AU. Sarah, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Brad.
You're welcome. We appreciate you. Nicole Cliff is the Cybersecurity Program Manager there at the Center at AU. Y'all been busy lately, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's been nonstop.
Extremely busy.
My first question is really generic. What is cyber? We hear it. You think cyber is the internet, cyber is computers, cyber is those fancy new buildings downtown. What do you think of when you hear that word cyber?
You're right, Brad. There's a lot of using cyber as a buzzword. It's funny because we have smartphones, not cyber phones, right?
Right.
And cyber is a lot of people think cyber is just the internet, but it's a lot more than that. If we look at the word cyber, I like that word. It was used a lot as slang in the 1990s. If you remember around that time when the .com boom happened, you had cyberpunk and cyber sex and all these cyber slang terms. And most of them went away. But one thing, if you remember the Terminator movie, Cyberdyne Systems, that was the name of the company that made these high-tech military-grade machine weapons. And cyber warfare was something that stuck around. So that was a piece of that slang terminology that just carried into what we see today as cyber. But back to what cyber means, what that really means, it's a combination of the people, processes, and technology that we see and use in our daily lives, right? We're all digitally connected. And it's easy to understand, I think, if you put it in the context of cybersecurity, because we hear that a lot. So if you imagine your phone, it's a piece of technology, right? And the app that you use to go to Starbucks and order your coffee, that's a piece of technology. But when you put a password on your app and your Starbucks wallet of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, that allows hackers to then steal all of your Starbucks money. Well, that's a piece of you. That's people, and that's how people are involved in cybersecurity and a part of it. By the way, that's actually the most common password for 2018.
You're kidding.
No, so I hope that's not your password. If it is, change it.
It's not far from it, but it is pretty basic. But you're right, people are always trying to find out those passwords, trying to hack into things. And we see it all the time on the news, cyber attacks, big and small. Is it as bad as it seems, people attacking our cyber systems? Does the media blow it out of proportion? It feels like it happens 24/7.
Well, that's a great question. And yes, it does happen as often as described in the news. And people shouldn't take the worrying effect. They have to be educated.
Yeah.
Education, it goes a long way, and knowledge is power. So if you look at it as, I always try to teach my kids, and we have this family thing in our home that when we go get gas or we go to a grocery store, we always pull on the point of sales terminal. Why? Because I have educated my family on the threat of the point of sales terminals being installed by the bad guys that collect all your credit card information.
So you pull on it to see if it comes off, to see if it's been, a secondary scanner has been installed by a bad guy.
Absolutely. They have these systems that actually sit. It's an overlay, and it sits on top of the normal point of sale system. And if you're at a gas station or a grocery store, you can actually pull on it, and it will come off.
Has that ever happened to either one of y'all? You found a fake one? You found one that's meant to steal your data?
No. No.
I do too, though, by the way. I do the same thing.
Yeah, yes. I'll tell you that we just had a conversation with the GBI folks that that work in our building. And the other day, they said, you know what? We found a credit card skimmer. It was at a gas station up in Evans.
Yeah, skimmer, that's it.
Yeah, yeah. And I was like, tell me which gas station.
Let me ask you this. Are some systems that we have in our homes, whether it's Microsoft that we use or whether we use Apple products, that are less susceptible to hacking or to cyber attacks? You hear, I don't know if it's a myth, that Apple stuff doesn't get viruses. Any feelings either way on that from y'all?
Oh, I'll tell you, I hate that myth about Apple doesn't get viruses, because it's not true. That myth came about because, you know, in the beginning there was a lot more PC than Apple, so for a criminal to, you know, go after a very small market, it didn't make sense, right? So they were going after PCs because there was just much more saturation. But obviously we've seen that, you know, Apple has had a huge increase in its market share, and people are using Apple. It's very, very popular. So there's also been a huge uptick every year with, you know, Apple vulnerabilities. So I wouldn't say that there's a particular, you know, brand or type of device or software that is, you know, that you should stay away from or that you should go to. What I would say is a lot of it is research, understanding what that software or hardware does, understanding the vulnerabilities that are out there, and I'll tell you, like when you think about smart home devices, one thing that you need to consider is the company that makes that device actively looking for vulnerabilities and then releasing updates and patches to make sure those get fixed, right? Because Microsoft and Apple are doing that.
And you should accept those every time they're offered? You should say,
oh, absolutely,
download or accept this?
Yes, sometimes
Absolutely.
those updates are for you know, user experience or different applications, but oftentimes, you know, security patches are a part of that, so you want to make sure that you're always updated.
What does it take to commit a cyber crime? I want to talk about large companies and how they're hit, but first of all, does it take a genius? Our children are learning coding in schools. What sort of skill set do you need to be able to do some damage?
So that's a very interesting question. There are different categories of attackers, and just to give you a rudimentary introduction to all of them, there's a script kiddie, which is a very amateur hacker, and this person doesn't have a lot of in-depth knowledge, but they have access to a set of tools that allows them to basically point and click to a specific target and wage an attack that way. These guys are mostly motivated by curiosity, or they want some sort of notoriety with their friends. Where we're getting hurt the most in today's industry and world, and where big businesses are hurting, is cyber criminals. In the world alone last year, it cost us over $600 billion, and these cyber criminals are motivated for financial reasons. It's a money-making business for them.
Yeah, mostly it's stealing other people's money, their data, and then their money, right?
Stealing it, the consumer information, sensitive information, stealing intellectual property from businesses. It's just one aspect of it. Another category that you don't see a lot of in the news are hacktivists. Yeah. Hacktivists are typically motivated by some sort of political ideology, religious belief perhaps, and website defacement would be an example of a tactic that they use. And possibly where our next war may be waged is in the cyber warfare domain. You have nation-state attackers. And this group of attackers basically are what we like to call threat actors, work on behalf of an adversarial government, either directly or indirectly.
You're talking about people that we would find all over the world working right now to try to do bad things to us and to our systems.
Yes.
These toolkits that these hackers have, no matter what level they are, I would think are constantly changing. Much like the updates that you mentioned that Microsoft or Apple send us, we should always accept those updates. How do you keep up with the toolkits that they have? Because they're constantly changing too, right?
Yeah, and you know, Brad, like Nicole said, you have all these different groups and they do have different skill levels, right? So your lower skill levels, they use those tools. Your higher skilled, you know, individuals, they're the ones actually making new tools. So if you're talking about a nation state group that has a really keen interest on getting into some government system or stealing some intellectual property, they have very highly skilled technical expertise, and they're developing new tools and techniques and ways to do that, right? when we look at those toolkits, they are always evolving, but they're out there to be, I mean, a lot of them you can download for free, but they're out there to be used not just by the bad guys, but the good guys. You see penetration testers using them. You know, you're going to pay me and I'm going to try to break in, and I'm going to have to use the same tools that the bad guys use so that I can understand, you know, if those tools are effective against you. But I would say that, you know, the reason that it's very difficult is because the criminals and the bad guys, unfortunately, they're actually very friendly with each other. They share tools. Believe it or not, there's a marketplace on the dark web where, you know, they have ratings. You can say, you know, how great this guy's tool was, or, oh, his tool was terrible. They rate each other, they sell these tools, you can outsource hacking, it's crazy.
An interesting fun fact in regard to what she just said, they actually have malware that you can buy on the darknet, and it has full 24/7 product support.
Malware does?
Yes.
Malware.
Are they constantly one step ahead of us cyber defenders, where we just react to whatever they throw at us? Surely there are many cases where we just block them from the outset, right? It sounds like they're always a step ahead.
Well, it sometimes feels that way. In the case of Equifax, to bring you were wanting to talk about
the
companies that have
yeah.
been affected by this sort of breach, and I think Equifax is just an awesome story to read and study from a cybersecurity perspective. So there was a vulnerability in their Apache Struts web servers. So that particular software had a vulnerability, and it was communicated to the world. There's this vulnerability. You need to install your patches. Well, Equifax does that for most of their servers. They missed one. And so when we're talking about security, we can't have this approach that, well, we got most of it. We got most of our servers. It was that one server that was a customer-facing web portal that they missed. And a lot of what we talk about too is the fact that you have to know what you have in order to secure it. And asset inventory is very important. So obviously they didn't know they had this web server, it had the vulnerability, and that's how the bad guys got in.
We're going to continue to talk about all things cyber here on the Means Report as we launch our 4-part series on the subject, hoping to educate all of you about what cyber means, how it impacts each and every one of us, large companies, people in their homes, and what we can do about the bad guys as they continue to try to get into our systems as the Means Report continues. Welcome back to the Means Report. We appreciate you staying with us as we continue to talk about cyber with Sarah Reese and Nicole Cliff, both with the Georgia Cyber Center at Augusta University. Sarah and Nicole, as we went to break, we were talking about the onslaught of threats that exist in our world, people constantly trying to hack into computer systems that impact everybody. So I take from that no protection is too expensive for people at home or for companies, is it? We should spend whatever it takes to protect ourselves, right?
You know, Brad, I think a lot of people have that idea that it takes money for good protection, and I would say it does take money in some cases. There is some financial requirements when we talk about protections, because technology isn't free. These products to protect yourself, I mean, your home antivirus, you have to pay for that, right? And it costs money to employ skilled people to protect an organization. But it's not just about money, it's really a much more complex problem. So I had said earlier that cyber really was people, processes, and technology. So you can spend money on technology and you can spend money on maybe skilled people, but some places where money can't do a lot is like your processes, for example. When Nicole mentioned Equifax, you know, they had processes in place for making sure that they had all those updates applied. Those obviously didn't work. And when you look at people, you know, you can employ highly skilled cybersecurity experts, but people are a soft target, and attackers go after people. We're really the weakest link, unfortunately. And they use certain things against us, certain tendencies and behaviors. So when you look at that old phishing thing, everyone's heard about phishing. Don't click on links, don't download things, it's a bad idea. Well, 92% of malware is still delivered through emails. And I check my email several times a day. We all do.
If you open it, does the virus get to you, or if you click on something in it, typically?
So it really depends on the type of email and the type of threat we're dealing with. Some emails come with links in them, and so by clicking links or clicking buttons or doing things of that nature, that's how you're going to be, exposed. Other emails use attachments, and those are really nasty because they usually involve embedded malware, so you don't see what's happening. You get this document, and it's a Word document. We all use Microsoft Word all the time. And that Word document, once you open it, it looks normal. It looks like a Word document. But what you don't see is that embedded malicious software running
What's
in a
embedded
computer.
malware? What is that?
It just means that that code is not visible to you, and whatever it's doing is behind the scenes. So it might be installing, a backdoor into your system to let a hacker in. It might be installing a keylogger that, records your keystrokes and captures your passwords and sends that out. So that's really what happens, and that's frequent. And I use Microsoft Office as an example because we all use that so heavily. And going back to hackers know what works, and they know that we use Microsoft a lot. So actually about 40% of all the malicious attachments out there, that include malware are Microsoft Office documents.
Listen, very quickly, let's say I'm an individual or a small business watching this program, and I say, all I can afford is the Norton antivirus, and hopefully that'll protect me. Is that wise, or must I bring in a firm, even a small firm, to come inspect my computer and make sure I'm safe? I want to do enough, but I don't have the money.
Oh, do you?
So I
Either
would
one
say,
of y'all, yeah.
Yeah, I would say that that's certainly a step in the right direction, but depending on the nature of the small business, I think it's always a good idea to bring someone on the outside, someone who specializes in security, to just ask for an assessment. And that's one of the things that we as the Georgia Cyber Center want to pursue as we develop our presence in and around the CSRA, is we want to be a help to small businesses to come in and do a cybersecurity assessment. So we have a checklist of things that we would look for, and just be a tool and a resource for the community in that regard.
Let me ask you this about safety concerns when it comes to hackers and cyber attacks, and just your general assessment, either one of you. How safe are our vital entities, our power grids here in Augusta, Fort Gordon, our medical community? How safe do you think we are when it comes to our attack vulnerability?
So I think we're definitely safer today than we were yesterday, but we're nowhere near where we should be. We have a long way to go, and we can't approach security as this snapshot in time. We measure our security posture by a picture we took at a particular time. We have to continually go back and monitor and evaluate the mitigation techniques and controls that we have in place. That takes a team of people as we integrate new technologies, and we have different people that we bring into our workforce. Those people have to be trained. We have to continue along the awareness track. So no, we're nowhere near where we should be, and we have to continuously go back. And if you talked about the power grid, we have so many threats here in the CSRA, and Sarah, do you want to speak to those?
No, I would imagine SRS too. I didn't mention that. Somebody told me right now, political scientist today, I believe, that if the Chinese wanted to turn off our power grid right now, they could. The skill level, the technology for them to do that to us is there already.
Right.
And that's been a reality for years. It really has been, and it's not just for us. There's plenty of other countries in the world that's a reality for. I mean, you remember perhaps Russia taking down Ukraine's power grid. I mean, that could happen here, right? So it is something that we need to be concerned about, and you're right. We have nuclear facilities, we have a large medical district, we have dams, we have power, we have an airport. All of these are pieces of critical infrastructure, and so that's something that the Department of Homeland Security says, these pieces of critical infrastructure, they are necessary for our safety, well-being, and prosperity as a society. So we do have to make sure that we're staying on top of cybersecurity and working that. And the Georgia Cyber Center, it's a state mission. And part of what we've done there is different than what's been done anywhere else in the country. We have academia, so we have college and university researchers and students. We have government entities, and we have private industries all under one roof.
Yeah, and that's already happening right as we speak.
Absolutely.
Everything's cranked up down there.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the idea is, if you talk about the critical infrastructure, I think a lot of people would say, well, shouldn't the government be helping protect that? But they don't own it. Private companies do, and that's why you need that collaboration between all of those entities in order to fully realize the solution for a lot of these really complex problems.
What cyber threat concerns, either one of you can answer this please, the most? And I don't want to just make people walk away from this program afraid, but there are areas we should be concerned about. Which one concerns you the most?
I wouldn't say there's one thing that concerns me the most. What concerns me is the speed at which things are evolving in cyber. It's very, very hard to keep up with, right? You mentioned earlier the attackers, are they always one step ahead of us? Unfortunately, a lot of times they are a step ahead of us, and so that's very, very scary to me. Last year, there were twice as many known vulnerabilities as there were in 2016. I said known vulnerabilities. That doesn't account for the vulnerabilities we don't know about that could be used against us. So for me, those are the kind of things that I think are important to pay attention to. But, again, it goes back to what Nicole was saying with, education, being aware of the vulnerabilities that are out there and knowing if I use this particular product or this software, what are the vulnerabilities? Am I making sure that I'm protected, by updating my software, by putting whatever other controls are available to me in place?
Do you mind if I use a good football analogy?
No, please do. We love football on the Means Report.
Yes. So I think about the championship game with Alabama and Clemson.
Easy.
And
go on.
Yes.
You're wearing crimson-ish colors,
no.
My hopes are high.
I won't tell you what colors these actually are, but you might really be offended if I told you that. But at halftime, Nick Saban was interviewed, and he was asked the question, "Coach, what do you think's going on? Like, why are you down?" And he answered with this statement. He said, "They're not really doing anything new against us." He said, "They're running plays that our opponents have ran against us."
Correct.
And that's exactly what's happening in the cyberspace domain. The attackers aren't really using anything new because they're studying, they've done their research, they've done their homework. They see that phishing attacks, as Sarah mentioned, are still working. Why should I develop a new tactic when this one is still effective? And that's exactly what happened in the game. Is Coach Sweeney said, "Hey, I don't need to dream up all these new plays to put in my playbook when I can just look at what the opponents did and use those same plays," and they were obviously effective.
Listen, Nicole and Sarah, you all have provided a wealth of information. You invoked the name of Nick Saban, so you're one of my favorite guests all time, and I appreciate your expertise very much. A lot more where that came from. If you'd like to continue to learn more about cyber, we would encourage you to email the folks at AU at the address you see on your screen. Don't forget to watch part 2 as we continue our exploration into all things cyber on the Means Report.